Hello friends, this module on aesthetics is an introduction. After studying this module, you will get a general idea of aesthetics as the philosophy of art and its development through centuries. This module approaches the topic through an analysis of the aesthetic theory of major philosophers and movements in art. We can define aesthetics in two capacities. One as the study of beauty and the other as the philosophy of art. When we use the term beauty, other terms like ugliness also come into focus. In traditional philosophy, the concept of beauty was linked with the idea of morality, ethical living, religiosity, truthfulness, and so on. Traditional philosophers dealt with aesthetics as if they were dealing with ethics. Contemporary aestheticians conceive the term to be the study of the philosophy of art. It deals with the creation, appreciation, and interpretation of work of art and the theory behind them. Etymology of the term aesthetics is the ancient Greek word aesthetikos, meaning sensitive, perceptive. Historically, it was ancient Greek philosophers who raised the question, what makes something beautiful? Pythagoras, who was an Ionian Greek philosopher and is a familiar name to mathematicians, linked the idea of beautiful with musical rhythm. Pythagorean concept of beauty was based on mathematical principles. He stated that every object in the universe is arranged according to the laws of number, and even planetary movements follow a musical rhythm. This rhythmic music created by moving planets fills the universe. Early Greek poets such as Homer, Hesiod, and Pindar include in their works some comments on the craft of poetry. However, it is Plato who offers the first extended treatment of beauty and arts. Plato thinks of art as something which should be abolished from an ideal republic. He says in his book Ion, which is conceived as a dialogue between Socrates and Ion, that creators of art are possessed by divine madness. So they lack the clarity of thought which is essential for the ethical existence of human being. While defining creativity, he proposes the idea of forms. The world of Platonic forms is the pure, most beautiful realm where only idea exists. When the creator materializes a form, he makes it to second step down from the ideal truth. When an artist represents this created form, then he creates it in third step away from truth. He gives the analogy of a chair where there is the idea of the chair, then materialized by a carpenter, and a picture of a chair drawn by an artist. Aristotle does not go this far in placing the artist at the lowest level. He argues in his book Poetics that an artwork can bring about a purification of negative emotions in the viewer, a catharsis. Plato and Aristotle thought that art was mainly dealing with imitation of nature. Mimesis was the term used by them to explain the concept of imitation of reality. Actually, these philosophers were dealing not with pure artistic creation, but with ideas of creation. For Plato, the world we see around is second level imitation of an ideal Platonic realm where only pure forms exist. During the early centuries of Christian era, religious concepts dominated ideas of beauty. Plotinus and Saint Augustine spoke of an ideal otherworld where light predominates, and the forms of our world are just emanations. Artworks of Middle Ages lack the representative mass and volume of the ideal Greek and Roman art because the patrons abhorred the idea of flesh. We see very flat iconic figuration which is ethereal and otherworldly during Christian era till the earlier Renaissance. The Gothic period also followed the same mode of iconic figuration, but the new architecture during the Gothic era allowed for vast areas of open window space. Artists were able to fill these areas with transparent glass paintings known as stained glass windows. The light passing through these windows created a heavenly glow, which was cleverly used by these artists to evoke a sublime feeling inside the spectator. But the sculptors of Gothic period mostly used images of hell and pain, also because sculpture has more material substance inside its form. During Renaissance, the idea of beauty was related again to the fleshy and muscular human form. Even though church was the main patron of art during Renaissance, growth of scientific thinking and patronage from a rich merchant class helped the upsurge of humanism. Travel widened the horizon of the world. The main thinkers of importance for the study of aesthetics during the era are Alberti and Leonardo da Vinci. It was during this time that natural forms were meticulously and analytically studied by artists. Law of linear perspective was developed by architects like Brunelleschi, and artists were able to project three-dimensional forms to a two-dimensional space. The transient quality of light was captured for the first time on a painted surface. It was in 18th century that aesthetics as a pure philosophical practice emerged. In 1717, there were some British writings on aesthetics, but it was the German philosopher Alexander Gottlieb Baumgarten who used the term aesthetics in its present meaning. A science of aesthetics would be for Baumgarten a deduction of the rules or principles of artistic or natural beauty from individual taste. Though he was the first philosopher to define aesthetics, it was Immanuel Kant who formalized and consolidated its foundation. Kant, in his authoritative book Critique of Judgment, dealt with the concept of taste. Taste is a very important term because how one appreciates and interprets a work of art is based on one's taste. Taste can be treated as an objective or a subjective principle. Kant was instrumental in unifying both these principles. This is a very difficult topic for a beginner, so we will leave it and take it up only later. Kant gave utmost importance to judgment and how taste functions in the appreciation of the beautiful. He elaborated on the term sublime more than on the term beauty. He theorized that a connoisseur should be detached from any sort of utilitarian function, and his appreciation should be based on purposiveness without a purpose. His satisfaction then will be disinterested. Only this disinterested satisfaction can be termed as aesthetic experience. The next philosopher of major significance to the subject of aesthetics is Hegel. His lectures on aesthetics deal with the evolution of forms of art. He suggests a definitive progression of art from symbolic to classical to romantic level. He placed the art of ancient cultures like Egypt and India to the symbolic level, which is aesthetically placed by him to be at the lowest. The idealist art of classical Greek was considered to be at middle level. Romantic art of 18th century Europe was placed at the highest level. If we view this theory at a peripheral level, it may appear to be biased. But if one makes a study of the aesthetic propositions made by Hegel to arrive at such a theory, one can see that it is very profound. The symbolic level of art suggests something in relation to another. For example, a lion is treated as a symbol of power. So, if a lion is painted by a painter as a symbol of power, the viewer will not be able to directly comprehend the real meaning intended by the author without a literal description. So, a system should exist to explain the symbolic meaning of forms. In the classical level of art, forms are perfected and idealized by compositing parts taken from many imperfect forms. The resulting form appears materially perfect. The intent of the author is to focus more on material rather than the spiritual. In romantic level, it is the innermost substance which is given priority. If there is a progression in art, there is also a possibility of end of art, where an artwork achieves self-knowledge. Hegel's theory is very relevant to contemporary aesthetics. Contemporary American aesthetician Danto has based his most popular end of art theory on Hegel's philosophy. The era of Romanticism positioned human being in relation to nature. Coleridge and Wordsworth proposed in their Romantic Manifesto the idea of the noble beast. The cultured human, placing oneself in relation to nature, contemplating and experiencing the sublime, is the protagonist of Romantic philosophy. Sublime as an experience rather than the beautiful predominated aesthetics from Kantian period. It is this philosophical perception materialized which we see in paintings of Caspar David Friedrich and other romantics. It is also a fact that religious imagery was transformed into idols of natural forms by the romantics. That is why some philosophers dub romanticism as pagan. Reality poses itself differently in modern era. Realism saw the human being as somebody who exercises his body to tackle daily existential cause with dignity. A human thinks and labors not only for himself but for the well-being of others too. The artists Courbet and Millet and writers like Émile Zola envisioned new contemporary themes adapted from the immediate surroundings. Immediacy, sensation and impression were more important to the realist than the distant ideal and the utopian. Sensory stimuli and social existence became important factors to art after the realist era. Impressionism dealt with the immediate and the sensory. Impressionism was a movement in art with a radical outlook. It approached the outside world not as a materialization of ideal forms, but as an amalgam of sensory stimuli. Thus, the reality of form for an impressionist became just a grouping of its properties. To clarify this idea, let us look at the example of a tree standing against a sky. For an impressionist, it is not a tree standing against a sky. It is a color patch placed against another color patch. They paint only what they see and not what they think. Properties of an object, especially the visual ones, change through the course of time. Impressionists were thus able to paint the reality of a simple form in 100 different ways. But the coherence of form was lost in their paintings because the impressionist was concentrating more on transient properties. The form lost in impressionist movement was recaptured in post-impressionism. Painters like Cezanne divided form to its primary components, the sphere, cone and the cylinder. Painters like Van Gogh and Gauguin used heavy outlines to separate objective form from a jumble of color. The post-impressionist experiments later led to the development of cubism, which changed the aesthetics of human-made designs and constructions. Existentialism as a philosophical movement made its appearance also during this era. The religious existentialist thought of Kierkegaard and the profane outburst of Nietzsche were products of the beginning of industrial era. This marked the alienation of man from his own natural landscape and inner self. Industrialization also brought about a change from the feudal system of agrarian living and thought. This deeply felt change resulted in the suppression and the awareness of being suppressed. Thus, we see revolutions and upsurges which were different in character from the religious battles of previous periods. Expressionism was a natural outcome of the suppressed individual and society. A major author of the aesthetics of Expressionism is Leo Tolstoy, and the 20th century painters of the Expressionist movement sublimated social and subjective angst and existential boredom through their works of art. A few painters tried to fill the existentialist vacuum by theorizing spirituality. Their Kierkegaardian experiments resulted in the abstraction of forms. It is not coincidental that the painter Vasily Kandinsky, who authored a book on aesthetics concerning the spiritual in art, painted the first abstract painting. Kandinsky and his fellow painters named the group the Blue Rider, influenced by the Kierkegaardian concept of knights. Another group of expressionists who opposed extreme subjectivity named their group as the New Objectivity. Theoretically, they were placing themselves beyond the level of individual emotions. Surrealism emerged as a movement after this period. It analyzes the problem of individual subject at the subconscious level. Freud, who changed the course of psychology, also changed the course of art criticism. The thought process behind Surrealism was based on the theories of Freud. He proposed uninhibited psychic automatism, which resulted in paintings, sculptures, and films which became extremely popular. It was influential in modifying the taste of common man than any other movement in the history of modern art. It was First World War which caused the formulation of Dadaism and its natural predecessor Surrealism. It was Second World War which created the circumstances for the emergence of American art as a major force. Abstract Expressionism, a major art movement of 1950s, based its aesthetic theories on the ideas of Jung. They extended the automatism proposed and practiced by Surrealists to objective level. The subjective automatic visions of Max Ernst and the objective automatic actions of Pollock can be compared to understand the progression from subjective to objective. The calligraphic nature of American art of this era was not accidental. Abstract Expressionism aesthetically adapted ideas from classical Chinese and Japanese art. Jackson Pollock and Mark Rothko, another major American painter, have written on their experiments with Eastern thought. Jung has also studied Eastern thought to arrive at his theories of collective unconsciousness and archetype. Another significant thought movement which had great impact on 20th century aesthetics is critical theory. Critical theories were mostly from Frankfurt School. Though Frankfurt School started at the time of Surrealism, that is in 1921, its major impact came later after the Second World War. Major thinkers like Adorno and Walter Benjamin wrote on the impact of mass production of cultural objects and their influence in manipulating the social psyche. Frankfurt School questioned the concept of the original and the copy. Walter Benjamin's famous essay, Art in the Age of Mechanical Reproduction, dealt with the mass production of art. In an era where culture is commercialized and packaged, a popular low-level artwork can place itself on a high pedestal and upgrade itself to the level of high art. Pop art emerged as a movement in Europe and America in 1960 likewise. Andy Warhol, a major painter of pop art movement, actually packaged the ideas of Frankfurt School to create artworks like the Marilyn Monroe portrait. He mass-produced artworks in his studio by silkscreen printing. His studio was ironically named the Factory. The theory of Derrida and Lacan went into human mind at a deeper level than that of Freudian subconscious or Jungian archetype. The level at which language is formed was analyzed by these theorists. Structuralism gave more importance to form and language than content. Post-structuralism placed the artwork above the author. Then it is imperative that the creation is more important than the creator, and that the created has its own existence independent from the creator. Artwork is open totally to the interpretation of the viewer. This allowed the possibility of imparting new meaning to all works. The focus on language itself as form and content resulted in many linguistic and stylistic experiments in the world of art. Postmodernism, performance, process, installation art, etc. can be seen as linguistic experiments and thus ideological inheritors of post-structuralism. Contemporary aesthetics proposes theories of feminism, neo-expressionism, transhumanism, technology art, and more. Mostly they deal with the marginalized classes of society and subaltern environment. The above brief introduction of aesthetics as philosophy of art and history of beauty dealt only with the Western tradition. Other cultures through centuries have devised their own systems of beauty. For example, African art and thought have greatly changed the course of Western aesthetics. The age of colonialism brought cultural objects en masse from Africa and the Orient to Europe. Picasso has adapted Cubist planar surface placement from Iberian sculptures and African masks. He extended on the structural experiments of Cézanne, whose experiments were influenced by Orientalism. Indian aesthetics is another vast topic which we will deal as a separate subject as part of our curriculum. There is also a need to understand some terms related to the study of aesthetics before we conclude this class. Aesthetic experience, aesthetic value, aesthetic attitude are the most important among them. Aesthetic attitude is the ideological position taken by a viewer or reader or author while judging an artwork. Even when one thinks that one is neutral in judgment, it is not so. Every individual or social judgment is governed by certain attitudes, conditioned by social and subjective history. Certain artworks are judged as decadent or extremely valuable at certain points of time. The reason for this is the aesthetic value created by many social forces. Thus, we may see a highly appreciated artwork hung on the saloon wall of 19th century is not regarded as a great work of art anymore. But a rejected piece of art by an avant-garde artist may be highly valued now. Thus, the value judgment changes through time. Aesthetic experience is the result of interaction with the viewer and an artwork through this social apparatus. An aesthetic experience is thus not passive. It is an active process decided by circumstances of the individual and his capacity for value judgment. Our introductory class on aesthetics is coming to its conclusion now. The ideas expressed here are approaches taken by great thinkers and masters of art who were able to change the history of human thought.